Football, or soccer as some people call it, has been building its global position as a sport for the last 100 years. It has become a vital part of the cultural landscape of many nations. In turn, the money that accompanies it makes it an arena of not only matches, but also a power competition similar to the ones that we associate with geopolitics. With the European Football Championship beginning very soon, now is a good time to look at football from a different angle. Welcome to the 20s Report.
This episode's partner is NordVPN. The cybernetic network is one of the fastest growing domains of competition between world powers. However, the fight is also on the individual level for my privacy or yours. VPN will help you cover your digital footprint on the internet, and NordVPN offers the best value for money in the market. By purchasing NordVPN from the link in the description, you support the development of good times, bad times. A game for influence.
Football is by far the world's most popular sport, and more than half of all people, about 4 billion of them, follow, play, and/or show interest in football. This critical mass translates into the money that accompanies the sport. And behind this comes influence and interests. Due to the resources that circulate around football, it is often not just a game for victory on the pitch,
поклонников футбола и лучшие футбольные сборные планеты.
But also a fierce game for influence on a supranational level. The Sports Global Market Opportunities and Strategies report shows that the spectator sports sector as a whole generates globally about $250 billion a year, and football accounts for about 43% of this amount. And this means that football's GDP, if we were to speak of it in terms of being a sovereign state, is around $107 billion. That's roughly the same GDP as Ecuador, and more than the GDPs of Slovakia and Ethiopia. Europe is definitely dominant in terms of geography division. Before the pandemic, the entire football market in Europe was valued by Deloitte at around $30 billion. Now, this is not surprising. Every year, the media reports on the sale of television rights, where the contracts concluded amount to billions of dollars, and the amount spent to hire individual football players would often be enough to build a stadium. Money is one of the most common motives in competition for power and agency in the geopolitical realm, and it's no different in football. Recently, we witnessed a classic example of this competition, when 12 leading European clubs organized a kind of coup d'etat on the reigning status quo. The coup was called the Super League, but let's start from the beginning. The Superior Global Football Organization, that is FIFA, associates 5 regional organizations according to a geographical key. In Europe, its subordinate is UEFA, which brings together 55 national associations. UEFA is organizing the European Championship as well as European club competitions, with the Champions League being its crown jewel. The lucrative years during which the largest football clubs in Europe were aggregating more and more capital led to a point where many of them are now valued at billions of dollars. However, neither FIFA nor UEFA have any resources of their own, and so both are directly dependent on the players, clubs, and federations associated with them. Eventually, the owners of the top 12 clubs in Europe asked themselves, do we really need an intermediary in order to play matches? And such an intermediary is, in their case, UEFA. As a result, 12 clubs organized a coup, proposing an alternative league outside of UEFA's jurisdiction, the Super League, which was to have a format similar to that of various games in the United States. For example, Major League Baseball or the NBA, which is to say an internal league for the selected where there are no outside regulations. However, the project turned out to be a standard example of misreading the balance of power by these club leaders. So on the one hand, we had 12 very large and wealthy clubs that wanted to create a hermetic league to generate even more income for themselves. And on the other, we had thousands of other clubs and their fans, years of tradition, and a fundamental rule for all football fans in the world: the rule of regulations and promotions.
I'm disgusted, absolutely disgusted. I'm disgusted with Manchester United and Liverpool most. I mean, Liverpool, they pretend, you'll never walk alone, the people's club, the fans' club. Manchester United, 100 years, born out of workers around here. And they're breaking away into a league without competition that they can't be relegated from. It's an absolute disgrace.
It led to a point when even the fans of these 12 clubs themselves were against them. And UEFA also announced severe sanctions, including kicking the clubs and their players out of all competitions.
I cannot stress more strongly at this moment, UEFA and the footballing world stand united against the disgraceful, self-serving proposal we have seen in the last 24 hours from a select few clubs in Europe that are fueled purely by greed above all else.
The seriousness of the situation was also evidenced by the fact that voices on this matter were given by leading European politicians, such as British Prime Minister Boris Johnson and French President Emmanuel Macron. The Super League ended up collapsing even faster than it was built. However, the specter of a split caught the eyes of FIFA and UEFA officials, and if the idea of the Super League were not so absurd, and if it was extended to more clubs, the first football schism in history could become a reality. This is not entirely a hypothetical scenario. While the power held by FIFA and UEFA is huge, it may become an object of competition in the future. Over its years of operation, FIFA has expanded its spheres of influence. In fact, it has more members than the United Nations, and it even associates with entities such as Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan, who are not members of the United Nations. The situation is the same with Palestine, recognized by FIFA but not by the United Nations. Through football, nations try to declare their identity and remind the world of their independence and aspirations. As a result, often the first step in nations striving for independence is to become a FIFA member. Football is also hard politics. The World Cup host, chosen by FIFA, must prepare big money to be given the opportunity to host the tournament. The organizing country must guarantee huge stadia that will generate the appropriate revenues. In addition, there have to be marketing and tax concessions provided to FIFA by the host. Therefore, presently, the possibility of hosting a tournament is, in practice, reserved for the largest and richest countries of the world. Despite this, the World Cup has been the dream of many nations and their leaders for years, which puts FIFA in the vortex of the geopolitical game. From the very beginning, the World Cup presented itself as an ideal soft power tool. Its host, by attracting the world's attention, can convey its message, whatever that might be. In 1930, Uruguay celebrated its 100th anniversary of independence. In Italy in 1934 and Argentina in 1978, it was a stage display for authoritarian regimes. The 1994 World Cup in the United States served to colonize America by football. The World Cup in South Korea and Japan was the first tournament held in Asia, and in addition, it was by states that were once sworn enemies. The 2018 Russian World Cup, on the other hand, was a warming up of the tarnished international image of Russia. Now, interestingly, this tournament, together with the planned 2022 World Cup in Qatar, could have been awarded by FIFA officials who were corrupted for this very purpose. And the US Department of Justice declares that it has evidence for such a case. Now, this would not be a novelty in football, as Sepp Blatter and Michel Platini lost their positions a few years earlier due to corruption allegations.
The football powerhouse of the future?
Football is believed to have originated in Great Britain. While such a statement can be disputed, as similar games have been played in other parts of the world, the British certainly deserve huge credit for making football global. In practice, the worldwide popularity of football is partly a function of 19th and 20th century British imperialism and naval power. Interestingly, however, it was also probably one of the factors serving its collapse. In many British colonies, the sport helped the colonized people to resist British rule. Now, the sport was used by the colonizers to strengthen a sense of discipline and hard work, but above all, it was supposed to help control the local population. However, this same discipline was often later used against the colonizer. Football expansion mainly affected Latin America and Africa, and was less visible in East Asia and its two giants, namely China and India. China, isolated from the world, only founded its first professional league in 1994. Since then, interest in football in China has gradually increased, while more and more money has appeared in Chinese football. This is due to the fact that the Chinese Communist Party, seeing the potential of football as a soft power tool, looked favorably on companies and people investing large funds into the Chinese Super League and European clubs. Also, it is well known that President Xi Jinping is a football fan. More and more money in Chinese football has attracted football stars. European clubs, noticing the untapped potential of the Middle Kingdom, began to tour China. In 2014, Chinese Super League clubs spent a total of £81 million on transfers, an amount second only to English Premier League clubs. However, these transactions often did not present much rationality. A good example is the transfer of 33-year-old Carlos Tevez from Boca Juniors to Shanghai SIPG. The transfer fee was £71 million, and Tevez himself charged over £30 million a season. Nonetheless, the Chinese approached the subject in their typical style. In 2016, they announced a plan to become the world's football powerhouse by 2050. The plan, presented by the Chinese Football Federation, dealt with the problem in concrete terms. 50 million children and adults playing football by 2020, and also 20,000 football schools and 70,000 football pitches, again by 2020. In 2030, China is expected to have one of the best national teams in Asia, and in 2050, it is expected to be a football tycoon. It's hard to verify how the Chinese are actually doing in fulfilling their infrastructural and social plans in this respect, but FIFA's current ranking remains quite clear. The Chinese national football team for the last couple of years has steadily ranked around the 70th to 80th place in the world.
Proxy Wars.
Euro 2020, which is just about to start, will once again trigger a wave of emotions on the old continent. For European countries, with their centuries-old conflicts and confrontations, it is often a battlefield where hidden geopolitical ambitions, phobias, likes, and dislikes are revealed. Sometimes, football is even seen as a metaphor for war, in which nations of different ideals attack each other on the battlefield, with their crowds of supporters filled with fanaticism. Now, during the match, we can observe a whole series of war rituals: the waving of flags, the changing of colors, the singing of anthems and songs, etc. The language of the sport itself draws elements from the military nomenclature. Before each match, you need to determine your tactics and your strategy. One shoots at a goal, like with a missile or a gun. The match starts with a breakout of hostilities. By the way, the very fact that we associate the terms attack and defense with sport more than with warfare proves the stability of our current times. Football and its culture are often determinants of geopolitical, religious, and national identity. That's why, in Spain, the Basque club, Athletic Bilbao, only accepts Basque players. The confrontation of Madrid's Real with FC Barcelona is an extension of the confrontation between the capital and separatist Catalonia. Glasgow's Celtic club is mainly backed by the Roman Catholic side of the city, while its main rival, the Glasgow Rangers, is backed by Protestants. At the 2004 Asian Nations Cup final, where China faced Japan, Chinese fans wore 1930s-style Imperial Japanese military uniforms to express their hostility to the Japanese team. However, there are times when football actually oscillates between sport and warfare, with the hostility on the playing field reflecting the strained relationship between two countries and bearing the burden of a painful history. Such was the case in 1968, when the World Cup qualifying match between Honduras and El Salvador broke the scales of bitterness. In the aftermath of the match, the two countries clashed militarily. Nevertheless, for most of the time, football allows for symbolic, limited confrontations without much political risk. Its impact on national and international public opinion is wide, and it's often a healthy safety valve for national resentments. As sociologist Norbert Elias put it, viewers of a football match can enjoy the mythic excitement of the battles taking place at the stadium and know that neither the players nor they will suffer any harm.
This was the 20th report. Let me know in the comment section below which national team will you support in the upcoming Euro 2020. I will cheer for Poland, obviously. However, our usual cup performances suggest not to have too high expectations. If you want your name to appear on this board, join us on Patreon. That's it for today, let the best team win, and we'll see you in the next episode.